We're going to be talking about this topic, this title, The Thirst of Our Inner Longings. Thanksgiving is right upon us. It's only a couple weeks away, and many of us are excited and enthused by the ideas of food and family and festivity, and that's all great. However, we all know from experience that Thanksgiving is not a meal, it is a lifestyle. It is as an attitude. And I think a lot of us, including myself, we're very ungrateful during this time of the year when we're supposed to be thankful, according to the calendar at least. But the calendar cannot dictate and tell us what to do. We are where we are, and we must confront that existence. And so we're going to be in John chapter 4 and Genesis 29 today. I'm going to assume that you're familiar with the story in John chapter 4. It's the story of the Samaritan woman at the well, and I'm going to paraphrase it right quick. Jesus is walking through Samaria. He did not have to walk through Samaria. Most people went around Samaria because they considered the Samaritans dogs. They considered them less than human. So most Jewish people, they're uppity. You know, Jewish people are really uppity. And so they walked around Samaria because they didn't want to associate with these people. But Jesus walks right into the heart of Samaria to meet one person. And they don't say her name, but she is a Samaritan woman. And for Jesus to ask this woman for a cup of water at the well is equivalent to a Republican asking a gay person for a drink at the bar. So it's unheard of. It's unthinkable that a Jewish man would ask a Samaritan woman for anything, especially a drink of water. And so, as the story goes, Jesus offers her everlasting or living water. And this woman is thinking of her physical means. She's thinking down here, while Jesus is speaking on ethereal level, on a heavenly level. And Jesus is offering her spiritual water where she's thinking that it's physical, literal water. And then she finally gets to the point where she realizes he's not offering me water from a well, he's offering me something spiritual. And Jesus says that if you drink of me, you will never thirst again. And this woman says, wow. And then Jesus throws her a curveball. And Jesus says, where is your husband? Now this woman, in our vernacular, was a hoe. She was a slut because she had been with 5 husbands, and the man she was with right now was not her husband, and she was sleeping with him. And the woman says, wow, you must be a prophet. And then Jesus claims that he is from God. And then they talk about this idea of worship. She changes the subject because you know when things get uncomfortable, you change the subject, awkward silence, then transition to another subject. And then she goes into another subject about religion and politics. Where should we worship? And then Jesus once again throws her a screwball. He says, woman, you don't worship on a hill, you don't worship on a mountain, you don't worship in a building. You worship in spirit and in truth. And all that conversation, the totality of it, funneled to what Jesus was trying to explain to her. Unless you worship me, young lady, your thirst will never cease, and you will sleep with every man you see. You will romanticize your life, and it will become undone. And when the woman realized this, it says that she left her pot, her water pot, and she ran into her city, unashamed, and told everybody what she had witnessed. Now I want to go to another story because I want to do another study on this guy named Jacob. And I'm going to read this story because some of us are a little more unfamiliar with the Old Testament, particularly Jacob. So I want to read the story from Jacob. And it's a love story, but it's much more than that. In chapter 29 of Genesis, verse 11, it says that Jacob was encountering a family, his relatives. And this guy named Laban, he was a father. And he had 2 sisters. One sister was really hot. Her name was Rachel. And the other sisters had a good personality. And her name was Leah. Okay? Forgive me for my euphemism, ladies. Okay? But Rachel was hot, and Leah had a really good personality. And then it says in verse 11, I'm going to read this real quick. Verse 11, I guess Jacob was so infatuated and even he was so lustful that in verse 11 it said that he kissed Rachel and he began to weep out loud. This guy must have really had some sexual frustration. No doubt. He had to. He just being around this woman made him weep for joy. And so in verse 12, now I'll skip down a little bit. In verse 13 it says, as soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. Laban embraced Jacob and kissed him. That's the culture back then. Men don't kiss each other now, right? He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home. And there Jacob told him all these things. Then Laban said to Jacob, you are my flesh and blood. After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to Jacob, just because you're a relative of mine, should you work for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be. What you want, man? You working hard. What you need? And Laban had 2 daughters, as I mentioned. And the name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. The text says Leah had weak eyes. She might have been cross-eyed. I don't know what weak eyes meant, but she had weak eyes. But Rachel was lovely in form and beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter. 7 years. That's a long time. I ain't working 7 years, right? But he was in love with her. Laban said, it's better that I give her to you than some other men. Stay here with me. Laban was a tricky guy. He was shady. He never said, yes, Jacob. He said, it's better that you be with, she be with you than some other guy. He never really said yes. He was very ambiguous. Okay? So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Oh, right? Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife. Guys, think about, and woman too, think about what Jacob says to Laban when the 7 years are done. He says, give me my wife. My time is completed, and I want to lie with her. Guys, when we present ourselves to the father of our fiancé or future bride, we don't say, sir, may I have her hand in marriage because I'm going to please her in bed. I'm going to make sure she's satisfied because I got extends and I got all this stuff. But that's exactly what he said to Laban. He said, it's time, man. 7 years I waited. I'm horny. I need her now. Time's up. Give me what I work for. That's exactly what he did. This dude was sexually frustrated. No doubt about it. So Laban brought together all the people and had a great feast. And now I'm going to summarize the last part. Laban is shady, okay? Because he tricks Jacob. When Jacob is inebriated, drunk, he puts a veil over his older daughter's face, Leah, and gives away his oldest daughter. He tricks him. He wants Rachel, but he gives him Leah. And so he's inebriated and he can't tell. So he sleeps with Leah. He wakes up the next morning. Some of us men might have experienced this. He wakes up the next morning and he's like, ah! Because it's not Rachel, it's Leah next to him. And she is fugly. She's not good looking. And he comes up to Laban the father and says, what is wrong with you, man? I asked for Rachel, not Leah. Do you know what I just did? And he said, oops. And then Jacob says, but I am so in love with Rachel that I'll work 7 more years to get her. Because Laban justifies his deceptive act by saying, but you know it is Jewish culture that the oldest daughter must go before the youngest daughter. Similar to Asian culture. And then he's like, fine, I'll take both of them. And that's where the story ends for now. I want to read this ad in the Atlanta Journal. I'm going to read 3 successive illustrations. And if you guys are sleepy today, you might fall asleep. Try to stand up in the back because you must think with me today in order to understand what the Bible is saying. What these stories are telling us, about life, and particularly God. You must follow me. I'm going to read 3 successive illustrations. You got to do your best to stay tuned. This ad ran in the Atlanta Journal, okay? Single black female seeks male companionship. Ethnicity, unimportant. I'm a very good-looking girl who loves to play. Capital Loves. loves to play.